Good evening and welcome to BATV News. I'm Keneal Gale. 1.75%. That's where the Bank of Jamaica's interest policy rate now stands. The central bank has lowered the rate by 25 basis points after fearing that inflation could now fall below the lower limit of the 4 to 6% target in the 2019-2020 fiscal year. Jamila Maitland has more.
Yesterday, the Bank of Jamaica BOJ announced that it's dropping its policy rate from 2% to 1.75%. The BOJ says the new rate is expected to help the country meet its inflation target of 4 to 6%. The Statistical Institute of Jamaica Statin recorded an inflation rate of 4.1% in November, lower than the 4.7% for the previous month in October and the 4.9% registered in November 2017. With the policy rate drop, the BOJ is predicting that inflation could now fall below the lower limit of the 4 to 6% target in the latter half of 2019 and early 2020. The central bank is also admitting that inflation could fall below the projected lower limit of 4% for December 2018. The November projections were expected to be cushioned by continued improvements in the domestic demand and increases in utility rates from international oil prices. However, international oil prices were lower than anticipated. Additionally, oil prices are expected to remain low and could possibly go even lower. This, the central bank says, will intensify the risk of inflation falling below the lower limit of 4%. There's also a concern that declines in domestic agricultural prices during the Christmas period could also contribute to lower inflation. And although there has been increased economic activity in the domestic market, the BOJ says it's not enough to stimulate the inflation needed. The Bank of Jamaica is stressing the need for more private sector credit extended by banks, noting that in October 2018, the pace of expansion in credit sector extended by deposit-taking institutions was lower than forecasted. The BOJ therefore argues that its decision to lower the policy rate is expected to stimulate a pickup in the rate of expansion in private sector credit. This, the central bank says, would lead to higher economic activity, which will help in achieving the 4 to 6% inflation target. The next BOJ policy decision will be announced on February 20, 2019. For BATV News, I'm Jamila Maitland.
Meanwhile, President of the Bankers Association of Jamaica, David Noel, has welcomed the move by the Bank of Jamaica to lower their policy rate to 1.75% in an attempt to stimulate more economic activity. However, he's warning that a low policy interest rate does not necessarily equate to low interest rates by banks or increased lending. Here's more.
Mr. Noel explained that with the BOJ's policy rate now at 1.75%, it's expected that there will be increased economic activity in the market. But is it enough to trigger inflation?
There is excess liquidity in the marketplace, and so I think the BOJ is within its purview to reduce the policy rate. It does, however, go a bit against what's happening in the market. We've seen over the last 2 months market rates at the Treasury bill auction going up by about 25 basis points. However, we've been operating in a low interest rate environment for some time. And you will see these movements from time to time. So it's something that I think Jamaicans should get used to.
In announcing the policy rate drop, the BOJ said it hoped that the banks would increase lending in a bid to stimulate the economy. But Mr. Noel, who's also the CEO of Scotiabank, is reminding the public that the lowered policy interest rate does not directly equate to lower interest rates at the banks.
So there is a bit of a disconnect between the thought of lowering a policy rate and somehow making it cheaper for banks to be able to lend to the public. It is a signal that the BOJ can use. There is excess liquidity, so if the BOJ wants to reduce its costs, I mean, it's one of the options to reduce the policy rate. But I don't think there's a clear path through from the policy rate to what the market will see, because this is not a rate that's actually allowing banks to be able to lend at cheaper rates.
Notwithstanding inflation being below target, the Bankers Association president notes that the country's economy continues to grow with the lowest interest rates in history. The fiscal situation is the best it has been in decades. You're seeing low interest rates. Oil prices remain low. Tourism is buoyant. The BPO sector is doing well. So everything speaks to continued growth in the economy or accelerated growth. We just have to make sure that growth is done prudently and responsibly. For BATV News, I'm Jamila Maitland.
President of the Vendors Association of Jamaica, Lionel Whittingham, has welcomed the extension of opening hours granted to vendors and store owners in downtown Kingston. Instead of closing at 8 p.m. as they were initially told, shops will now be able to remain open until 12 midnight to facilitate the busy Christmas shopping season. Tashana Small tells us more.
Downtown Kingston, the hub of Christmas shopping for many Jamaicans. But the usual hustle and bustle was under threat, as authority initially planned to force the area to close at 8 p.m., much to the dissatisfaction of vendors and store owners. But President of the Vendors Association of Jamaica, Lionel Whittingham, says his organization has successfully lobbied to have this changed.
We're at a boiling point where vendors was wondering if they are not going to get grand market that people talk about. And because of the special time which were put in place, where you have to pack up at 8 o'clock, they were worried about it. Well, good sense prevailed up to Wednesday afternoon, and I went into studio to let everybody know that that time has been extended, you understand, for weekdays up to 12 p.m. and for weekends which start from Friday to over into Sunday 2 a.m. on weekend days.
Mr. Whittingham says the extension has resulted in more vendors coming into downtown Kingston to sell their goods.
What have happened since that? There's an influx of vendors, both seasonal, those vendors who are regular and residential vendors over the season, happen to take on to downtown. So you find that there's a great influx of people, both who come, everybody's trying to get a piece of the dollar.
And already shoppers are flooding in.
There's a major, you understand, inflow of shoppers on downtown Kingston at this moment. If you look to the east, coming into St. William Grand Park, you'll find that it's bumper to bumper traffic on the north, on the top of North Street, coming down King Street into the business district. It's bumper to bumper.
He says vendors are making money because customers are drawn to the cheap goods that are sold downtown.
Matter not what people say that nothing are going. Nobody wants to expose that they are taking in too much or taking in too little. We are bracing for it. It's a dash out thing. And remember, we can shop you from $1,000 to $750 and take you down to $500. A woman can be shopped in downtown Kingston for that money. From a slippers to a crosser to a blouse to even some costumes, really. You are still at $500.
Mr. Whittingham also wants shoppers to know that they'll be safe in downtown this Christmas because the security forces will be out in their numbers.
I can tell you there's a lot of security down here. Want to big up the Jamaica Constabulary Force and want to also big up from the KCAC side, thumbs up to them because their Metropolitan Police are working. And then you have a lot of undercover policemen who are in plain uniform. You don't even know that they are police.
For BATV News, I'm Tashana Small.
And when we come back, analysts credit stable local economy for a stock market boom. This and more after the break. Welcome back. With the Jamaica Stock Exchange, JSE being among the top performing markets in the world, analysts are crediting this to the improving fundamentals in the Jamaican economy. The Assistant General Manager for Treasury and Trading at JMMB, Greg Lindo, and Chief Investment Strategist and Head of Research at JN Fund Managers, Ramon Ferguson Small, were guests on BATV's business discussion program On Point last evening. Tashana Small reports.
For the last 5 years, the Jamaica Stock Exchange, JSE, has been among the top performing equities markets in the world, rising to the top for 2 consecutive years to outperform 90 other markets globally. Assistant General Manager for Treasury and Trading at JMMB, Greg Lindo, says this is because of the improving fundamentals within the Jamaican market.
Overall, if we're to look generally at the market, the earnings multiples that stocks now trade at, it is much higher than past years. In that, there may be some exuberance in terms of the supply and demand imbalance, and there's not a lot of shares available, persons trying to buy, which pushes up the price. But you can't ignore the fundamentals, which have also improved.
And
Additionally, he says the current low interest rates have also helped the market to grow.
Well, you can't ignore the low interest rate environment,
Agreed.
which we've had for an extended period. Persons are looking to maximize the returns on their portfolios. So if you look around Kingston, real estate is one of the benefactors of that.
Right.
And you can't ignore the fact that, yes, a lot of this money has flowed into the market. But in terms of, is it hype? I would not necessarily characterize it that way. You do have some companies that have not lived up to maybe the expectations, and this is manifested in the valuation multiples. But overall, with where the market is now, I would say it is more fairly valued.
Okay.
In the meantime, JN Fund Managers Ramon Ferguson Small points out that the improving market conditions have also resulted in investors becoming more vigilant.
The market is becoming more and more of a stock pickers market. You know, the rising tide of the improving fundamentals in Jamaica has really caused most of the boats to rise as well, right? But I think now we're getting to a place where people will have to become a lot more deliberate with respect to
But
the stocks
is
that they buy.
it
For BATV News, I'm Shoshana Small.
Meanwhile, the stock market analysts are forecasting that Brexit and the current conditions of the American economy can negatively affect Jamaica's stock market. Here's more.
With the looming uncertainty of Brexit and U.S. share markets falling over the past months, JMMB Greg Linda says there could be some negative repercussions for some listed Jamaican companies, especially those whose profits depend on exports.
Our market is in no way insulated from these international events. So hard Brexit or a Brexit that results in significant fallout will definitely manifest in some of the earnings of the companies that are exposed. So like a Grace, which does a good amount of business, or a JP.
He points out that globally interest rates are rising, while in Jamaica they continue to trend downwards. He argues that this might not be sustainable.
Agreed.
So we have an environment now where globally interest rates are looking to increase.
Yeah.
But yet in our market, rates have been on the decline. One could ask, is that sustainable? Is it sustainable to have US risk-free rates higher than Jamaican rates? And what does that mean to the market if Jamaica now has to adjust interest rates? So what happens globally with Brexit and in the US market can definitely translate itself here. Maybe not directly impacting the market, but causing a change in maybe our monetary policy, fiscal policy, that could then trigger an adjustment in the market.
Meanwhile, JN Fund Managers Ramon Ferguson Small says this has caused some investors to refrain from taking further risks.
I certainly am not as positive on the United States as I would have been a year, 2 years ago. You know, the implications of uncertainty are certainly playing out in full effect in the United States right now. It's been 9+ years of an uptrend in the economy, as well as the market. We see one except 1 year on the S&P. So as you've rightfully pointed out, there may be a time now for things to kind of slow down a bit and take a pause, which is always very healthy for an economy and a market.
In the meantime, Mr. Lindo had some advice for investors.
With the volatility, if you have a US dollar exposure, it's an opportune time for you to switch it to Jamaican exposure, because the rates are pretty much the same. So if you can take that volatility out of your financing, then it would suit you to do so.
So you find that
For BATV News, I'm Shoshana Small.
The governments of Jamaica and Japan have agreed in principle on a tax convention between both countries. The convention includes provisions for the purposes of clarifying the scope of taxation in the two countries, eliminating international double taxation, and preventing tax evasion and avoidance. It is expected to promote further mutual investments and economic exchanges between the two nations. The convention will be signed after the final text has been agreed on and the necessary internal procedures completed by each of the two governments. The convention will then enter into force after the completion of the domestic process in both countries. Stay with us. Regional and international stories are up next. Welcome back. Time now for regional and international news. Members of the group Bahamas Against WTO is telling the government that they are willing to fight the decision to accede to the World Trade Organization, WTO. Bahamas Eyewitness News' Tia Thompson has more.
A group advocating against the Bahamas ascending to World Trade Organization are calling on government to halt the move and said that the matter should be put to the people to decide through a referendum.
In this country, which is a democracy, if the majority wants it, that's what it should get. That's right. And that's why we're asking the government to put this fundamental, life-altering decision to the Bahamian public.
These people do not care about the Bahamian people. It is designed to facilitate and to support foreigners from abroad. That's right. Who are not our color. The WTO promises to push the gains of the limited gains of majority rule back, to make us second-class and third and fourth-class citizens because of money and class and color.
According to co-president of the Bahamas Enough movement, Maria Daxon, joining the WTO jeopardizes jobs that she says are already scarce for Bahamians. Activist Kelvin Colebrook said that with the WTO privatization policy, the Bahamian government would not be allowed to own any government services, and Bahamians will no longer be able to depend on government jobs.
If you want to do it, you put it off, just as was done with the independence. There was a vote at the general election in '72 that if you vote for us, you get independence. We want them.
And we're going to continue educating. We're going to be visiting churches, visiting various civic organizations, educating and bringing to the Bahamian people and unions what this will mean for the Bahamian people. It's something that's going to affect the young people. When the real pain from this organization comes upon our country, if we join, most of us here will be gone, but our children will still be here.
BATV member Paul Moss said that the governing party should state in their clause that the only way the Bahamas will join the WTO is if it is voted upon. Moss added that many Bahamians seem to be unaware of how serious this issue is, but the organization, he says, intends to provide monthly meetings for Bahamians and provide information through their social media platforms. Reporting for Eyewitness News, I'm Tia Thompson.
A senator in the St. Lucian Parliament says the government's development plan needs work. He argues that young people are being left behind and too much emphasis is being placed on infrastructure and not enough on human capital development. Here's more from HTS News' Chelsea Joseph.
Former school principal and SLP Senator Gibeon Ferdinand has criticized the government's approach to development. He says it is not people-focused and concentrates instead on concrete and consultants.
Unfortunately, I haven't seen anything that inspires our young people along the lines of their own personal development, especially in education. I have said it before that there is no clear policy on education in this country. It's over 2.5 years the government is in office, and we are yet to hear or even see any steps in that direction.
He says that the government's overall plans are misguided and incoherent, pointing to its policy on technology in schools as a clear example.
Smart schools. It's not just talking about putting Wi-Fi in schools. We had that program going quite a long time ago with Dr. Fletcher. It included schools and other community facilities. So if you have that in your mind as far as your development programs are concerned, why is it that there is no infrastructure in place for that? And the laptop program is a good example. How are you going to develop smart schools? You're going to have students doing work independently when they have no tools, no gadgets. It doesn't make sense to me. So all of this to me is a lot of talk. And in the new academic year beginning September 2019, I will still ask those questions.
The lifelong educator says the government's neglect and missteps on education are disappointing the youth in particular and the nation in general. Chelsea Joseph, HTS News Force.
The runway at London's Gatwick Airport has reopened and flights have resumed after being suspended for almost 2 days. Gatwick was forced to close on Wednesday evening after drones were spotted flying near the runway. More than 100,000 passengers have been stranded since. Police say the incident is not terror-related, but they're still searching for the drone operator. More in this TRT World Report.
Delays are often part of flying, but this has been different. hundreds of thousands of people have been forced to wait because of flight cancellations at Gatwick near London. A plane on the ground cost an airline money, and there were plenty grounded after drones flew dangerously close to the runway.
May I first of all say I feel for all those passengers whose travel plans have been disrupted by this drone activity and the action that's had to be taken in response to it. And obviously at this particular time of year, this is particularly difficult for people.
Like most countries, the UK has laws against flying drones near airports. It carries a penalty of up to 5 years in prison. The army's been deployed to help police locate the drones and their handlers. They've considered shooting down the devices if sighted again, but it's not their safest option.
The police have not apprehended the criminal who has been operating this drone. What has changed is there are a number of mitigating measures in place provided by a number of government agencies and the military to ensure that I have the confidence to be able to reopen my airport.
Passengers have been weighing their options. Many have been waiting for more than a day.
Whoever is behind this has very carefully and deliberately targeted the world's busiest single runway airport at a time when everything is under maximum strain. There's very little slack in the system, and you've just got tens of thousands of people with their Christmas plans in tatters.
Early on Friday, Gatwick allowed a few flights in and out, but officials say it won't fully open until it's safe. Until then, passengers will have plenty of unwanted time to shop for some last-minute holiday gifts. Regan Devines, TRT World.
Slanderous. That's how China is describing the accusations that it was involved in a massive hacking campaign against the United States. 2 Chinese nationals have been charged with targeting at least 45 U.S. organizations, including the Navy. The Justice Department says the suspects are linked to the Chinese government. Al Jazeera's Patty Culhane reports from Washington, D.C.
At the Justice Department, sweeping allegations against 2 Chinese nationals accused of widespread hacking.
The victims included companies in banking and finance, telecommunications and consumer electronics, medical equipment, packaging, manufacturing, consulting, healthcare, biotechnology, automotive, oil and gas exploration, and mining.
The government says the hackers were able to get into the computers of NASA, the Energy Department, and the Navy, stealing the personal information of 100,000 sailors. They wouldn't name the companies that were targeted, but did say many of the attacks were aimed at managed service providers.
You've all heard about situations where you see somebody, essentially the cyber equivalent of breaking into a house. This is more like breaking into and getting the keys from the maintenance supervisor who has keys to hundreds and hundreds of apartments and all the residents in those apartments.
According to the indictment, the 2 worked for the Chinese government and are believed to still be in China, meaning they are unlikely to actually be arrested. But this comes at a time of increased tensions between the U.S. and China after the arrest of a Chinese tech executive at the request of the U.S. on charges of violating sanctions and the clock ticking on a 90-day window hoped at ending the trade war, leading to another bad day on the stock market as the U.S. injects even more tension to the already fraught U.S.-China relationship. Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Stay with us. Talking Stocks comes up next. Welcome back. Time now for Talking Stocks. 57 stocks traded today, of which 31 advanced, 18 declined, and 8 traded firm. The main JC index advanced by 106 points to close at over 372,000 points. The junior index advanced by 66 points to close at over 3,207 points. Over 5.8 million units traded today, valued at more than $165 million on the Jamaican dollar market, while on the US dollar market, more than 272,000 units traded, valued at over 51,000 US dollars. Lasco Financial Services, with a little over 2 million units trading, accounted for 35% of market volume. NCB Financial Group, with over 600,000 units trading, was second, and Carreras Limited, with a little under 500,000 units trading, was third, making up 7% of the market volume which crossed the floor. The main advancers were Lasco Financial Services, gaining 75 cents to close at $4.97. followed by Barita Investments up $4.57 to close at $40.91, and Everything Fresh up 17 cents to close at $1.67. The main decliners were Proven Investments down 3 cents to close at 19 cents, followed by Margaritaville Turks US dollar ordinary shares, which went down by 2 US cents to close at 20 cents US. And Caribbean Cream ordinary share down 30 cents to close at $5.52. And that's the news, but before we go, a recap of our top story. Bank of Jamaica lowers interest policy rate to 1.75%, hoping to increase inflation and stimulate economic growth. Thanks for watching. For more content, please go visit our website at batvja.com and like our Facebook page. That's Business Access TV. I'm Keneal Gale. Have a great weekend.